The bass throbbed in Isabel's chest like a second heartbeat. Lights pulsed across the dark room in flashes of violet and crimson, slicing through the haze of sweat and sound. Tessa's laughter rang out nearby, but Isabel wasn't listening. She was watching him. He was standing by the bar, a glass in hand, untouched, still, unbothered. His eyes scanned the room with calm interest, not like the others who drank to drown themselves. His gaze lingered once, just long enough to meet hers. Isabel's breath caught. "Go talk to him," Tessa whispered in her ear, pressing a drink into her hand. "I don't even know his name," Isabel replied, but her feet were already shifting. There was something magnetic about him. He didn't move like a man who needed to be there. That only made him more intriguing. The dance floor swallowed her whole as she moved toward him, one careful step at a time. Bodies brushed against her. Heat, perfume, laughter. But her eyes stayed fixed on him. He noticed and smiled. By the time she reached him, her heart was thudding harder than the beat. "Hi," she said, breathless, from dancing or anticipation. She wasn't sure. "Hi," he said, and his voice was deep, smoother than the drink he still hadn't touched. "I'm Isabel." "Caleb," he replied, offering his hand instead of a drink. She liked that. "Not dancing?" she asked. "I was waiting for the right reason." He stepped off the wall and held her eyes for a moment longer than necessary. She didn't need to answer. He was already leading her onto the floor. Their bodies didn't crash, they aligned. Isabel found herself moving closer than she meant to, feeling the warmth of his palm at the small of her back. Their movements weren't rushed. They weren't showing off. There was rhythm, restraint, and something simmering just beneath the surface. When the music shifted to something slower, heavier, he didn't ask. He simply stayed. So did she. Her hand slid up the curve of his shoulder. His breath grazed her temple. "You always dance like that with strangers?" she asked, half playful. "Only once," he said. She laughed. And then the moment narrowed, tightened, when he leaned in, almost as if to kiss her. But he didn't. His lips brushed close to her ear. "Can I walk you to your car?" It wasn't a line. It felt real. Outside, the air was warm and thick. Summer clung to everything. Her heels clicked softly on the pavement as they walked in silence. They reached her car. She turned to face him, heartbeat back in her throat. "Thank you for all that." Caleb smiled, tilting his head just slightly, like he was considering whether to kiss her or say goodbye. He chose neither. "Good night, Isabel." He turned and walked away. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, fingers resting on the steering wheel, lips parted, and heart undeniably stirred. Isabel sat on her bed, wrapped in a soft robe, the club still echoing faintly in her head. Caleb's scent, the weight of his palm, the curve of his voice. She wasn't used to someone leaving before the kiss. That restraint had lingered longer than any touch. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. One message. "Caleb, made it home. Couldn't stop thinking about the way you smiled on the dance floor." She stared at the screen for a long second, her pulse jumping. "Isabel, you didn't strike me as the type who'd ask for a number." "Caleb, I didn't." Tessa gave it to me when I asked nicely. Of course she did. Their messages slipped into a steady rhythm, slow, teasing, honest, in the way only nighttime conversations could be. Music, books. What made her move to this town? Why he hated loud mornings? Time passed unnoticed. At 2:17 a.m. he wrote, "You always let strangers this close to your thoughts." She paused, then typed, "Only once." The typing bubbles flickered, disappeared. Then, "I'd like to see you again, Isabel." No music this time. Just you. They met 2 nights later. Caleb lived in a quiet part of town. The kind of place where the houses were modest but solid. Porches wrapped in soft yellow light, and the trees whispered when the breeze picked up. His house matched him. Understated, composed, with clean lines and warm lighting from inside. Isabel stood on his front step, hesitating. This was different. There would be no cover of noise, no club pulse to fall back on. Just him and her, and whatever it was growing between them. He opened the door before she could knock. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," she returned, heart flipping at how comfortable he made the word sound. The interior smelled like cedar, and something darker, like books and skin. A single record played low in the background, jazzy and slow. She noticed a sketchpad on the table, a half-finished design in pencil. He didn't hide it. "Red or white?" he asked, holding up 2 bottles. "Red, but only if it's not sweet." He grinned. "Noted." They settled onto his couch. No TV. Just a single floor lamp casting a golden circle around them. Conversation bloomed easily, their words curving around shared observations and quiet flirtation. Caleb listened like it mattered. His gaze didn't wander. And when Isabel laughed, she saw how it softened him, just a little. "You seem comfortable in silence," she said. "I prefer it," he answered. "Noise has its place, but silence tells you what's real." She sipped her wine. "That's unexpectedly deep for a guy I met in a club." "You're not what I expected either." There it was again, that gentle tension. Neither one of them moved, but everything in the air between them did. When he reached for her hand, his fingers brushed hers with deliberate ease. "I won't kiss you tonight," he said quietly. The words surprised her. "Why not?" "Because I want you to come back. Not just for that." His thumb stroked her knuckles. Her breath hitched, not from frustration, but from the calm certainty in his tone. "I'm not in a hurry," he added. "You're not like other men." He met her gaze. "You're not like other women." They sat like that for a while, touching without pressure, close without rushing. She eventually leaned into his shoulder, the wine softening the edges of her day. "I should go," she murmured, though she didn't move. "I know." He walked her to her car again. This time she kissed his cheek, slow, warm, just enough to make him inhale sharply through his nose. "Good night, Caleb." "Good night, Isabel." She drove home in a daze of warmth and restraint, her body aching, not from need but from anticipation. Something real was unfolding, and it was only beginning. The week unraveled slowly, threaded with texts and soft laughter between meetings, coffee breaks, and late-night thoughts. Isabel found herself checking her phone more than usual. Caleb didn't flood her with messages, just enough. A song he thought she'd like. A photo of a sketch. A line from a book she'd mentioned. Always thoughtful. Never too much. By Friday, Tessa had enough. "You need to get out of your own head," she said, tugging Isabel into her closet. "Tonight we go out. You wear something dangerous." Isabel smirked. Define dangerous. Short, tight, illegal in 3 states. They ended up at a lounge bar, less wild than the club where she'd met Caleb, but loud enough to blur the edges. She let Tessa drag her into a loose circle of dancing bodies, but her heart wasn't in it. She was distracted, restless. And then there was Dante, tall, warm-skinned, and charming in a way that didn't pretend to be deep. He poured her a drink on the house and asked, "Haven't seen you here before." "Not really my scene," she said, taking the glass. "You're here tonight," he pointed out. "That's something." They talked. He leaned in too close but smelled nice. He was funny, too. Disarming in the way a good bartender knows how to be. There was a moment later when she stood with him near the back door, the streetlights catching in his eyes, and he leaned in. She didn't stop him. The kiss was soft, confident, easy. But that was all. "I should go," she said afterward. "No hard feelings," Dante replied, with a grin that said he'd expected exactly that. The moment passed like a breeze. As Isabel walked to her car, her phone buzzed. "Caleb, still up, thinking about your laugh, and your hair, and the way you hold your wine glass." She paused. "Isabel, are you home?" "Caleb, always." She didn't even go inside her apartment. Just turned the wheel and drove. 15 minutes later, she stood at his doorstep again, her body still humming from the night. Not from Dante's kiss, but from the way Caleb's presence pulled at her even from a distance. The porch light flicked on as she raised her hand to knock. He opened the door with a look she couldn't quite name. Surprise, relief, hunger, all braided together. "Hi," she said softly. "Come in," he replied, stepping aside. Inside, the air was cooler. The same record played, something low and melodic. Caleb wore a soft grey t-shirt, barefoot, his hair slightly tousled like he'd been lying down. He took her coat wordlessly. "I didn't plan this," she said. "I'm glad you didn't." She sat on the couch. He joined her, a little closer than before. Not touching, but near enough to feel. "Rough night?" he asked, just unclear. She looked at him, then away. "I kissed someone." He didn't flinch. "Okay." It didn't feel like anything. Caleb nodded slowly. "I'm not here to measure your moments." She looked at him then, really looked, and something inside her loosened. "I didn't want to be alone," she admitted. "You're not," he begged. She didn't remember shifting. But suddenly, her head was on his chest, his arm wrapped around her. They sat in silence for minutes, maybe more. The music faded, but neither of them moved to restart it. His hand brushed her shoulder lightly, up and down, like a rhythm only they could hear. "You can stay," he murmured. "Just sleep?" He nodded. "Just sleep." He led her to the bedroom. The space smelled like him. Clean, earthy, comforting. She slipped out of her jeans and top, standing in a tank and underwear. Caleb didn't stare. He turned to the other side of the bed, giving her space. She crawled under the sheets. When he lay beside her, his hand found hers in the dark. Just that. They breathed in sync. Her body warmed where their skin met. The rest of her aware of every inch not touching him. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Eventually, her breathing slowed. He listened to the small sound she made when she drifted off, half sigh, half surrender. It wasn't sex, but it was intimate in a way that left her more exposed than if she'd been completely bare. Утром она проснулась к солнечному свету, пробивающемуся через полупрозрачные шторы. Кейлеб еще спал. Один рукав его футболки задрался, обнажив теплую, спокойную линию плеча. Изабелл улыбнулась и осталась лежать, не двигаясь. She hadn't planned to fall asleep in a stranger's bed. But Caleb didn't feel like a stranger anymore. The days that followed blurred into something soft and slow. Isabel stayed again. And again. It wasn't official. It wasn't spoken. But when Friday night came and Caleb asked, "Here or your place?" the answer was already in her overnight bag. They didn't rush it. Their bodies brushed in the kitchen. Their legs tangled on the couch. At night, he would hold her, not always close, but always present. They didn't cross the line, but it loomed thin and glimmering between them. She wasn't used to patience being this intense. One night, he made her tea with honey, slid the cup into her hands and said, "I like the way you take up space here." "I haven't even left a toothbrush," she replied, teasing. "You already did," he said, motioning to the bathroom counter, and there it was, next to his. The next evening was unusually warm. They sat on the floor near the open balcony door, bare feet touching, sharing wine and playing music through a quiet speaker. Isabel wore one of his shirts, oversized, the hem brushing high on her thighs. Caleb had on flannel pants, nothing else. Every movement felt deliberate, every silence heavy. She reached across his knee to grab the wine, and his hand caught her wrist. "Stay," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied, but she didn't move. His eyes held hers for a moment too long. Then his hand slid slowly up her arm, then down again, fingers grazing lightly. Goosebumps chased his touch. He kissed her. Finally. It was slow, almost cautious, lips brushing, parting, returning. One hand on her hip, the other in her hair. He pulled her closer until she was straddling him, knees on either side of his legs. Her fingers curled into his shoulders. When he pulled away, it wasn't because he wanted to. "I don't want to mess this up," he whispered against her mouth. "You're not," she breathed. They kept going. Clothes shifted. Skin warmed. His shirt slid down her shoulders. Her bra unhooked with practiced ease. His breath caught when he looked at her. Fully. Their chests touched, and Isabel felt herself tip over the edge of the hesitation. Her hands moved down his chest, fingers brushing the line of his waistband. Then he stopped. "Wait!" She looked up, startled, pulse pounding. "I want this," he said. "I want you, but not like this." "Why not?" He closed his eyes for a second. "Because I'm not just drawn to your body, Isabel. You've become something more. I don't want this to feel like release. I want it to mean something." "It already does," she whispered. "I know." His voice was quiet, almost strained. That's why I'm scared of doing it wrong. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. Then don't stop wanting me. But don't stop talking to me either. They lay down after that. Not touching, just close, her bare chest against his side. The tension was still there, stronger than ever. But now it was laced with something deeper. Tenderness, a mutual choice to wait, even when the waiting burned. She drifted to sleep with his heartbeat beneath her ear. Sometime after midnight, Isabel woke to the sound of Caleb's phone vibrating on the nightstand. He didn't stir. The screen lit up, flashing a name she didn't recognize. Marina. The name hit like a whisper through glass. The screen dimmed. The vibration stopped. She stared at the shadows on the ceiling, body still warm from his arms, heart now uneasy. Who was Marina? Why was she calling him in the middle of the night? The next morning, he was back to himself, gentle, focused, smiling over coffee. But something in her had shifted. He noticed. You're quiet. She sipped slowly, considering. Who's Marina? Caleb didn't flinch, didn't blink. He set his mug down. My ex. The word hung heavy between them. She called last night, Isabel said, calmly, not accusing. I saw. I didn't answer. Why is she calling you? I don't know, he admitted. We haven't spoken in months. Isabel looked out the window. Her pulse was steady, but something inside her felt unsteady. Do you still talk to her? No, he said, firm. Not really. Not since we ended it. What happened? She left. It was messy, and I let it end badly because I didn't know how to fix it. Silence. I'm not her, Isabel said. I know, he replied immediately, but something fragile had cracked open. Doubt had crept in. Later that day, when she packed up to leave, he kissed her forehead, not her lips, and she let him. As she drove home, she couldn't tell if she was pulling away or giving him space. She only knew that the quiet between them wasn't as soft as before. The silence between Isabel and Caleb stretched into something brittle. They still texted, still exchanged morning hellos and half-hearted, "How was your day?" But the ease was gone, replaced by a quiet watchfulness that neither of them named. Isabel told herself not to care. It was just a name on a screen, just an old echo. But the echo wouldn't fade. She'd been in the room when someone came back before. Always too late or too loud. She didn't want to be second choice to someone who had already walked away. She didn't say anything. But she didn't stay the night either. Until one Sunday afternoon, 3 slow days later, when Caleb texted, "Are you home? I'm outside." Her heart jumped. She pulled the curtain aside and saw his car parked quietly. He didn't get out. He just waited. She opened the door before he reached it. I wasn't expecting. I know, he said, eyes tired. But I didn't want to keep thinking about what I should have said, so I'm here. She let him in. No hug, no kiss, just space. And I told you Marina was my ex, he began, but I didn't tell you everything. Isabel folded her arms. Okay. She left me for someone else, he said. Not all at once, but eventually. And when she did, I stopped trusting the way people say goodbye. It didn't feel like an ending. It just lingered. Isabel said nothing. She texted after months of silence. I didn't answer. I didn't want to. But the moment I saw her name on that screen, I saw everything we used to be. Not because I miss it, but because I hated who I was at the end of it. He looked at her, searching. And now with you, I'm scared of doing it wrong again. Scared of breaking something before it begins. You're not her, Isabel said. And I'm not him, whoever you were then. Caleb stepped closer, slowly, as if giving her time to move. She didn't. I think about you all the time, he said. The way you sit too long with your tea. The way you pretend to listen when you're actually lost in thought. The way you say my name when you don't know what else to say. She felt her throat tighten. I know I was quiet after that night, he went on. But not because I didn't want you. I was just scared of how much I already did. Then he reached for her hand. Not to pull, not to possess, just to touch. I want to be with you, Isabel. Not in theory, not in maybe. Right now. She didn't answer with words. She stepped into him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him. Not softly, not cautiously, but like a dam breaking. They didn't move to the bedroom right away. Clothes began to fall in the living room, one slow piece at a time. His fingers slipped beneath her shirt, palms sliding up her sides as her breath hitched. She tugged at his belt, grounding herself in every sound, every motion. When they finally reached the bed, there was no rush, no panic, just skin on skin, mouths finding rhythm, breath sinking into something deeper than urgency. He explored her body with patience, with reverence, as if he was relearning how to touch and be touched. Isabel arched beneath him, her back lifting as his mouth found the curve of her collarbone, then lower. Her fingers curled in his hair, pulling him closer. And when he entered her, the stillness between them shattered. They moved together like they'd done it 100 times, like their bodies already knew. There were no words, only gasps, hands grasping, soft moans in the darkness. The connection was raw, and yet impossibly tender. Not possession, but communion. She whispered his name when she came, eyes closed, body trembling around him. He stayed inside her, forehead against hers, breathing uneven. No promises, no declarations, just the quiet, shared certainty that this was real. Later, when they lay tangled in the sheets, the moonlight catching the edge of Caleb's shoulder, Isabel finally spoke. I was scared too, she said softly. He turned to her. Of what? That it wouldn't feel different. That it would be like all the other times, just heat and noise. And? She traced a finger along his collarbone. It wasn't. He smiled, pulling her closer. Good. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady thump beneath the skin. For the first time in weeks, the silence felt full again. Not with doubt, but with peace. The morning was quiet, soft around the edges. Isabel stirred first, her skin warm beneath the covers, her thigh still draped across Caleb's. She didn't move, not right away. His breathing was slow, steady, and for once, She didn't feel the need to measure her presence by his rhythm. She wasn't tiptoeing in borrowed space. She was here, entirely. Light crept in through the thin curtains, silvering the edges of the room. Somewhere outside, a bird chirped twice, then went still. Caleb shifted, half waking. His arm curled tighter around her waist. "You're still here," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Where else would I be?" He smiled without opening his eyes. "I thought maybe you'd disappear, like a dream." She kissed his shoulder. "Not this time." They didn't rush out of bed. There was no reason to. The world outside could wait. Later, he brought her coffee, exactly how she liked it. And she wore his t-shirt, oversized and soft against her bare thighs. They sat together on the floor near the window, knees touching, sharing a blanket and passing a single book back and forth, reading aloud in turns. "Do you always do this with women you sleep with?" she teased. "Only once," he said, with a quiet grin. When their laughter faded, she looked at him. Really looked. There was no tension in his shoulders, no guarded pause between thoughts. The distance that once lived behind his eyes was gone. He was here fully, with her, and she felt it in herself too. They talked about everything and nothing, how she missed thunderstorms, how he wanted to design a cabin in the woods, what it meant to feel safe in another person's silence. At some point, they returned to the bedroom, not because of desire, but because it was where they belonged. This time, it wasn't about hunger. It was about closeness, the kind of touch that didn't need to build into something louder. Just warmth, skin on skin, fingers grazing familiar curves, lips pressed gently into hair, into a shoulder blade, into the curve of a smile. Later, Isabel lay sprawled across Caleb's chest, drawing slow shapes with her fingertips. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said, almost absent-mindedly. He brushed his thumb over her wrist. "Of what? That you're holding on to a past? Or waiting for someone else?" He looked down at her. "That was never it. I was just waiting to believe this was real. And now?" He kissed her forehead. "Now, I'm sure." Isabel didn't respond right away. She just closed her eyes and breathed him in. His warmth, his steadiness, the soft smell of cedar and skin. Eventually, she stood and wandered barefoot through the living room. Caleb stayed behind, watching her from the doorway. His body wrapped in a blanket. She paused by the window, fingers tracing the edge of a photo frame. The street outside was still. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked and stopped. The air hummed with late summer quiet. Then she turned. "Do you have a guitar?" He blinked. "What?" "You look like the kind of man who hides a guitar under the bed." He laughed, disappearing into the hallway and returning with an old acoustic, the wood worn smooth at the edges. "I haven't played in a while." "I won't judge," she said, settling into the corner of the couch. He strummed once, twice. The sound filled the room, tentative but lovely. Then he played something slow, imperfect, raw. Isabel watched him, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his fingers moved, like they remembered a part of him he hadn't used in too long. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand, completely caught in the moment. "You're good," she said when he finished. "I'm not." "You are to me." Caleb set the guitar aside, his cheeks a little pink. Now you have to do something embarrassing. Too late, she said, smiling. I already fell for you. His expression softened, the way it always did when she caught him off guard. He crossed the room and sat beside her, his hands finding hers. They didn't need more words, not now. The quiet wrapped around them, full and golden. Not the silence of hesitation or fear, but the sound of belonging. And in that moment, Isabel understood. The space between them had never really been empty. It had just been waiting for the right touch, the right voice, the right stillness. Now it was full. Now it was theirs.